The last thing I want to talk about, the Kansas City Chiefs. We know they lost Tyreek Hill. They lost on board in free agency one of their best cornerbacks on their team to the San Francisco 49ers. You lost Honey Badger. And I think that this is still my pick to win the AFC West this year. I'm not going to sit and lock it in stone, but I think too many people are overlooking Kansas City. There's even a couple of people out there that think that the Chiefs are going to miss the playoffs this year. And it's really funny, man, because I give this lecture almost every year. In almost every single segment, I have to end up going on this rant and giving people this lecture. But too many people judge teams based off talent. I don't know if a lot of you guys realize this, but think about it. Does the best team win the Super Bowl every year? No. Let's be honest. If you were going to tell me that the New York Giants were going to beat the Patriots on paper, many people would have said that you were crazy. I'm just saying the best team does not always win the Super Bowl every year. And you want to know the reason for that? It's because of coaching. That's what people seem to overlook when it comes to making these record predictions in the offseason. A lot of people make their predictions based off the talent that a team has, and they don't take coaching into account. That's why I was right about the Steelers and the Patriots both making it into the playoffs last year when a lot of people were counting them out. That's because a lot of people didn't give props to Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin's ability to elevate those rosters. When you have an elite head coach, they are able to elevate the talent that they have on their squads. And for Kansas City, it's not as if they just went from being the best team into the NFL to being one of the worst teams in the NFL. I mean, yes, losing Tyreek Hill is a big loss because Tyreek Hill by himself is good enough to win you 3-4 games. You get what I'm saying? His impact to affect the game, not only as a wide receiver, but in the return game as well, is special. That's definitely a big loss. But you have Andy Reid and you have Patrick Mahomes, and that's really all you need. You have an elite quarterback and you have one of the best coaches in this game. So for Kansas City alone, just having Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they should already be included in your playoff prediction. Then on top of that, you still have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. You have offensive tackles, Orlando Brown. You got Andrew Wiley. You have offensive guards, Joe Thuney, Trey Smith, center Creed Humphrey. So this is a top 5, no worse than top 10 offensive line. You get what I'm saying? You look at the wide receiver position. Yes, you don't have a Tyreek Hill, but you do have a good amount of players who can step up and have big roles in this offense. I think Mecole Hardman could finally have a breakout year this season. And the thing with Mecole Hardman isn't that he's trash or anything like that. He's a pretty solid player. The thing is that he doesn't get the same amount of volume as a Tyreek Hill or a Travis Kelce does. So if he can get about 80, 90 targets this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him end up being a Pro Bowler. You also have Juju Smith-Schuster, and I know that Juju Smith-Schuster, he's one of those players that you either you hate him or you love him. As a Steeler fan, I love Juju. I was a little bit hurt when it came to my realization that he was going to end up leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I understand the TikTok thing rubs people the wrong way, but if you look at Juju on the field, he's one of the best slot receivers in the game. He's a good blocker. He's really dependable in third down situations. I'm going to miss Juju in a Steelers uniform. You also have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who I think could end up being a really good deep threat. You got rookie Sky Moore, Justin Ross. If you guys haven't seen my Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver preview, or who I think is going to end up stepping up for the Chiefs at receiver this year, make sure that you guys go ahead and check that out. But I think that Justin Ross is going to end up starting over MVS at one of those starting outside wide receiver spots. You also do have Josh Gordon in there. He's somebody who Andy Reid loves a lot. So this offense still should be really good. You got Travis Kelce there, who is probably going to be your most reliable weapon in the passing game. Running back is a really interesting situation. And it's not a bad one, but you do have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who kind of looks to be a bust at this point. He has kind of struggled to stay on the field. When he's on the field, he's okay, but not as dominant as what you would expect out of a first-round pick at running back. You bring in Ronald Jones. I'm interested in seeing how he's going to impact this offense. You still have Jerick McKinnon there. So the offense, you shouldn't be too worried about. Even with the loss of Tyreek Hill, this is still going to be a top 10 offense statistically, just because you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes there, and you do have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. On defense, many people are probably going to ask, JT, where's the pass rush coming from? Because the pass rush kind of has been something that Kansas City hasn't really had over the last couple of years. You still have Chris Jones there. We know about him. He led the team in sacks with 9. You got Frank Clark, who had 4.5 sacks. Then you have Mike Dana. You have Nanati, who both had 3 sacks each. Then you drafted rookie George Karlaftis out of Purdue. And many people felt that he was a big steal for Kansas City. I'm really intrigued in seeing what he does in his rookie year. Some people believe that he can end up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year this season. We're going to have to see. But I was a big fan of Karlaftis. This is somebody who was an extremely hard worker at Purdue. When you listen to some of those Boilermaker coaches talk about him, they loved his work ethic. He was a great leader. This is somebody who gave it his all on every single snap. Never had to worry about him taking a snap off or a playoff. I love George Karlaftis. I'm excited to see what he's going to do this season in the Chiefs uniform. At linebacker, you're pretty solid there. You got Willie Gay, Nick Bolton. Cornerback is probably another grievance that many people have when it comes to Kansas City. You got L'Jarius Sneed there, who is their best corner at the moment. You have Rashard Fenton there. I don't know, but you do have slot cornerback Trick McDuffie, who many people loved when he was coming out of this past year's NFL draft out of Washington. I'm a big fan of his, and if he ends up playing in that slot position, I think he could immediately end up being one of the best slot cornerbacks in the league, and he could kind of have a similar rookie season to what Nate Hobbs had with the Las Vegas Raiders last year. And if you're a Chiefs fan, you probably should know who Nate Hobbs is, because, I mean, let's not act like we don't pay attention to the rest of the division if you are a Chiefs fan. So Nate Hobbs was the best slot cornerback in the NFL when it comes to rookies. There weren't too many good rookie slot cornerbacks that had the kind of season that Nate Hobbs had. So at safety, you lost Honey Badger, but you replaced him with Justin Reed. He's younger, kind of underrated. I feel last season for Houston may have been his worst year yet as a pro, but he's been pretty solid. You do have Juan Thornhill there. He's also pretty good. So for Kansas City, man, don't sleep on them. And remember, I was the same person who came up on here last year when everybody was writing off Kansas City when they got off to their slow start, and you can still watch it. I don't have too many shorts up on the channel, but I told people, do not sleep on Kansas City. There were so many people who were quick to count out Kansas City when they just had a couple of weeks when they struggled. But that was just the first few weeks of the NFL season. I tell everybody, you have to judge teams based off what they do come the month of November, because that's when teams start to separate themselves. I look at Kansas City, and I think Kansas City offensively could maybe be better without Tyreek Hill, because there were a lot of instances where Patrick Mahomes would just force Tyreek Hill the ball downfield just to throw him the football. So with him being gone out the mix, you're going to have other wide receivers who can get involved and have an impact in this offense. So yes, Tyreek Hill is a loss. You definitely are going to miss that. You probably are going to have to be a little bit more creative. You're going to have to work a little bit harder on offense if you're Airbnb or Andy Reid, whoever the heck they have calling plays. But overall, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be a lot better than what people think. I'm going to have a hard time seeing Kansas City win less than 11 games. 11 games is how low I'm willing to go with the Chiefs. And if you say 10, I can understand that. If the Chargers and Broncos end up being as good as advertised, then yes, Kansas City probably could end up winning 10 games. But anything less than 10 wins and in the single digits, I think is extremely pushing it. And I'm not willing to go no less than 11. You probably could argue that they could win 10. And maybe you could get me to budge a little bit. But single digit wins for Kansas City this year, not happening. Just because you lose Tyreek Hill, you still have other great pieces in place that have success. So The Kansas City Chiefs are going to be better than what a lot of people think this year. I think a lot of people are thinking that this is going to be a team that's going to struggle. They're going to be a little bit up and down. And when Kansas City ends up being a well-oiled machine and they end up winning, 12 games this year, and they're still in the running for one of the top spots in the AFC come playoff time, I'm going to come right back on here and I'm going to say I told you so. You see, there are so many people who are quick to want to count out successful franchises just because they're tired of seeing them at the top. And last year was a perfect example of that. The moment Kansas City struggled out the gate, many people took that opportunity to say, this was the end of the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty. This is the end, JT. And look what happened. You get what I'm saying? One thing that I'm never going to do is count out a team that has a great head coach. And I'm not counting out the Patriots this year. I'm not going to count out the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the only reason why not having a great coach isn't a guaranteed lock for you performing better than expectations is only if you're in the situation that Mike Tomlin is and you have a lot of other good coaches in your division, or same thing with Bill Belichick. You look at the Patriots, the reason why they could do more of less and just rely on their coaching was simply for the fact that the AFC East at the time didn't have any good coaches. Then Sean McDermott comes in, and then the Buffalo Bills end up succeeding the Patriots when it comes to a talent standpoint, and they end up being the most talented team in that division. Then on top of that, you already have more talent than New England, and you had a coaching staff led by Sean McDermott that was one of the best in the league, and that's when the Buffalo Bills started to overtake New England. So unless you have Brandon Staley, Nathaniel Hackett, or Josh McDaniels that just come out this year and show me that they are elite coaches or really good coaches, and they are able to make adjustments, and they can coach up to the level of an Andy Reid and the coaches that he also has on his staff, they're not going to understand that. But at the moment, I still think that Kansas City should be the favorite to win this division. But I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Make sure that you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're listening to this on YouTube. Remember that this podcast is out on every single podcasting platform: Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available, and I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode.